My name is Vikram. My question is for both of you. During my first 2 years at UCLA, the atmosphere of the social sciences were that of truth and free speech. But these last 2 years, the atmosphere has devolved to post-truth and correct speech, and this has bled out to the rest of the campus. My question to you all is A, do you believe that the social sciences are the cause of this problem? And B, if you were the chancellor of a university like UCLA, what would you do to restore free speech and truth? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think it is. It's largely the epicenter of the problem. I think it's what postmodernism has done to the social sciences. But I think it is. Yeah, there's certain departments that are worse than others, but it is. I think it's been well diagnosed by people like Jonathan Haidt and the work he's done at the Heterodox Academy. And I mean, so these are academics who are sensitized to this issue. And it's ideology that is in some cases it doesn't even have the pretense of trying to get at what's true. It's trying to broadcast a message that is to which people need to conform, and it has much of the structure of a religion. There's apostasy, there's blasphemy, there's excommunication. To take one case that many of you have probably heard of, there was a philosopher, Rebecca Tuvel, I believe her name was, who wrote a gender studies paper about, she just was speculating, so the fact that you can be transgender, she found philosophically interesting, given that now we have this moment where transgenderism is kind of universally celebrated. I mean, it's acknowledged to be kind of a new kind of norm, and this was the moment where where Caitlyn Jenner was being celebrated, but at the same moment there was this woman whose name is now escaping me, who claimed to be transracial, right? Rebecca Dolezal, is that her name? She was white by, I think, any reasonable definition, or it was at least the definition of her parents. Her parents claimed she was white, and yet she claimed to be black. And so Rebecca wrote this paper trying just asking the question, if transgenderism is a real phenomenon, why can't transracialism be a real phenomenon? And she was just hurled from the ramparts of academia for this. I mean, her own thesis advisors, and I mean, it was just pure savagery what happened to her, and this had the character of her transgressing a kind of taboo. I mean, she touched a third rail of discourse that she didn't know existed, and all pretense of rational discussion even went out the window. I mean, there were people who were throwing her under the bus who admitted they hadn't even read her paper, but just the mere rumors of the paper was enough to destroy her reputation in their eyes. So, yeah, I think it's a problem, and we need the administrations have to just have an explicit policy. I mean, I think the University of Chicago came out very strongly in favor of free speech and not deplatforming people. And I think all the universities have to get on the same page on this.
I'm not as quick to dismiss postmodernism as Sam and some others, because I don't know what the hell it is. When I talk to people and they complain about it, I can never get a cohesive definition of postmodernism that's consistent across all the detractors. I think there's a lot of problems with labels, and I've mentioned this before, so I won't go on a full story here, but we use labels as shorthand. It makes it easier for us to communicate, but that's only true to the extent that the people we're talking to have the same understanding of the words and labels that we use. And we are desperate to put people in buckets and put ideas in buckets. And so the example that I've used before is I've identified as a feminist. What's that mean? Well, it depends on who you talk to. Oh, well, that can't be. Feminist has to be this. Well, that's what somebody said. What's the feminist position on pornography? Well, it depends entirely on which feminist you talk to. There are feminists as Sansara Taylor, Tasliman Ezrian, who will view pornography as a vile exploitation of women. And yet we have other feminists, nobody's going to deny really apart from internal arguments, that any of these women are feminists, like Greta Christina, who's edited porn magazines, worked as a sex worker. These labels are only as good as we allow them to be. And so when we start talking about, and I'm not going to get off on the transgender, transracial, blah, 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 what's happening is, I saw this in the election. I have friends, I did not vote for Trump. I don't think that's going to come as any surprise. But I have friends who did. And I talked to them about it. Yes, I blocked some people on Facebook in the heat of the moment, but eventually I talked to some people about it. And what one of them told me is that I'm not a racist, and yet every time I would say anything in favor potentially of Trump or opposed to Hillary or Bernie or whoever, I just got called a racist. And that's because there are a couple different connotations of racist. There's not only implicit racism, there's explicit racism. There's the definition of racism as bigotry based on a genetic trait such as race, or a social construct, race being a social construct. And so if people are calling you or saying that you're a racist because in their view, race is a social construct, and they are talking about implicit racism, essentially saying you are endorsing policies that have a disproportionate effect on minorities. That's what they mean by racism. And yet when you hear the word racist, you hear you are a member of the KKK, there can be no communication because you're talking about two different things with the same label. We are in a transition period on some of these as we change the way we talk about things. I don't think it's always good, but I also don't think it's always bad. As we clarify our language, I think we're going to get to better understanding of things. That's going to change how we talk about some things. Yet, when it comes to the campus issues, I'm in favor of free speech, and I'm in favor of letting the universities and the students decide what kind of campus they want. And if it turns out they want a campus that nobody wants to go to, they'll deal with those consequences.
Yeah. Welcome to Evergreen.